The shuttle shook as it entered the planet's thick pink clouds. James gripped the armrest, staring out the window. Below, the alien world of Velrina stretched across the horizon. Silver forests, glowing rivers, and tall crystal towers that touched the sky. It looked beautiful, peaceful. But something didn't feel right. James was one of 12 Earthmen sent here on a special mission. Earth had signed a new peace treaty with Velrina. As a symbol of friendship, human men were chosen to live among the alien people for 30 days. That's all they were told. The ship landed on a soft platform of light. The door opened, and a warm breeze rushed in. It smelled like flowers and electricity. The men stepped out one by one, and then the aliens came. They were tall, elegant, mostly women. Their skin shimmered like glass in the sun, and their eyes glowed soft gold. They wore long robes that moved without wind. None of them smiled. A voice echoed in the air. No speakers, no machines. "Welcome, Earthmen. Today begins your service under the law of daily joy." The men looked at each other, confused. A soldier named Rex raised his hand. "What law?" Another alien woman stepped forward. She looked older, with silver patterns on her forehead. Her voice was calm but sharp. "Every Earthman must please one of our women. Once a day. This is the law of joy." Silence. James blinked. Did he hear that right? Please a woman? Once a day? Was this some kind of test? Before anyone could speak, the alien women walked toward the men. One by one, they placed a hand on their chosen human. There was no asking, just selection. James felt a cold hand touch his chest. He turned. She stood tall, nearly his height. Her hair was like dark smoke. Her eyes burned red like fading coals. "I am Kalina," she said. "You will serve me." James tried to speak but found no words. Her grip tightened slightly. "You will please me before the sun sleeps," she added, "or you will be removed." "Removed?" James asked, confused. But she was already turning, leading him toward one of the tall crystal towers. The others followed with their assigned humans. No one spoke. No one laughed. James walked in silence beside her. His boots echoed on the glass floor as they entered the strange building. Inside, the walls shifted like liquid. The doors opened without touch. They entered a private room, simple but glowing. A soft bed, a strange tree in the corner. The air was warm. Kalina closed the door. A soft click locked it. James stood stiff, not knowing what to do. "I think there's been a mistake," he said. "I was told we'd be helping with diplomacy, maybe culture exchange." Kalina turned to him slowly. Her face was unreadable. "You are here to bring joy. That is what your world promised." James raised his hands. "Okay, but what does please mean? I don't know your customs. I don't want to do anything wrong." She stepped closer. For a moment, her eyes softened. Almost curious. "To please does not always mean flesh," she said quietly. "There are many ways." He relaxed a little, then she added, "But joy must be real, not fake, or the bond fails." He blinked. "Bond?" Kalina sat on the edge of the bed and pointed to a chair. "Sit. You will begin." "Begin what?" She stared at him for a moment. Then she smiled. It was the first smile he had seen from her. "I want you to talk," she said. "Make me feel something. Surprise me. Move me. You may sing, tell stories, speak of your world, but do not lie. We feel lies." James swallowed. This was strange, but better than what he feared. So he sat. He told her about Earth, about rainstorms, music and food, about how dogs wag their tails when they're happy. He told her about coffee and how humans argue over how it should be made. Kalina listened silently, her eyes never leaving his face. Then she said, "You made me smile. Once. But the day is not over." She stood and walked toward the glowing tree. Its leaves pulsed with light. "Tomorrow," she said, I will ask something else. James sighed. What had he gotten himself into? Suddenly, he heard a soft scream through the wall. Muffled. A man's voice. He stood up. Kalina's eyes turned sharp. Do not ask, she said coldly. He failed to bring joy. James froze. The door locked again, and the room fell silent. The morning light on Velrina didn't come from a sun. It came from above, like the sky itself was glowing. James woke up slowly, unsure if he had slept at all. His head felt heavy, like he had dreamed of strange things but couldn't remember them. Kalina stood near the tree in silence. She hadn't moved from that spot since last night. Her dark eyes watched the glowing leaves like she was waiting for them to speak. James rubbed his face and sat up. So, about this whole joy thing, he said carefully. What's the plan for today? She turned to him slowly. Follow. No good morning, no smile, no small talk. Just one word. Follow. James got dressed and walked behind her down the shifting hallways of the Crystal Tower. Other humans passed by, each walking silently behind their assigned alien woman. No one made eye contact. No one dared ask how anyone else's first night went. They stepped into a floating platform. It moved without sound, carrying them across the glowing city. James looked out. In the distance, he saw a huge field of silver vines wrapped around strange red trees. It looked like a giant alien garden. Kalina led him into the middle of it. This is my soil, she said, kneeling near a bed of dying, blue flowers. It's dying because I'm unbalanced. James raised a brow. Unbalanced? Our kind is emotional. We feel deeply. When our hearts are heavy, our land fades with us. You were sent to help, to return joy, but not with your body, with your presence, with your soul. James stepped closer. The flowers looked like they were made of glass, but when he touched one, it crumbled into dust. Touch the soil, Kalina ordered. He hesitated. I'm not really a plant guy. Touch it. He knelt beside her and placed his palm on the silver soil. At first, nothing. Then slowly, warmth. The ground under his hand glowed, just a little. Kalina's eyes widened, her mouth opened, slightly in shock. You reacted to it, she whispered. Only a bonded one should be able to do that. James pulled his hand back. That's not normal? No. It means something is beginning. Something rare. James stood up, brushing the dirt off. What does it mean for me? She stood as well, eyes serious. It means you must not leave, not now, not until we understand this bond. James looked around at the field. The soil where he had touched now shimmered faintly, while the rest remained dull and gray. What if I don't want a bond? He asked. Kalina looked at him for a long time. Then we both die slowly. The silence between them deepened. They walked through the garden for hours. Kalina showed him which plants responded to emotion. She showed him how some flowers would bloom if he hummed gently. One tree changed color when he thought of his home. James realized this world didn't run on machines. It ran on feeling. But as the day passed, something strange happened. The more time he spent with Kalina, the more she changed. She wasn't cold anymore. She watched him closely. She asked questions about Earth, about music, about how humans cry when they're sad. That evening, back in their room, Kalina stood by the glowing tree again. Her back was to him. You pleased me today, she said softly. More than you know. James sat down slowly. I just touched some dirt. She shook her head. No. You shared something real. You let me feel joy in a moment. That is rare, even among my own kind. Then her voice changed. Lower, more unsure. I am afraid, she admitted, because joy can be dangerous. James tilted his head. How? If it is taken away, we break. Suddenly, a loud knock hit the door. Kalina turned fast. Her body tensed. James stood up. "Who is it?" The voice from the other side was cold. "Official. Report check. You are late to file your pleasure outcome form." Kalina moved to the panel and pressed her palm against it. "He succeeded. The record is filed." There was a pause. Then silence. The presence left. James let out a breath. That was intense. Kalina turned toward him. Her eyes were softer now, but still glowing red beneath the surface. "If they think you failed, they will take you," she said. "Take me where?" She didn't answer. Instead, she sat across from him and said, "Tomorrow you will try again, but not with soil, not with plants." He blinked. "Then with what?" She leaned in just slightly. "With a part of me I've never shared." The next morning, the air in Velrina felt wrong. James stepped out of his room with Kalina. Something had changed. The city still glowed, the skies still shimmered pink, but the halls were too quiet, no chatter, no movement. Even the Yeo alien women walked with tighter faces and sharper eyes. James noticed it right away. 2 Earthmen were missing. "Where's Marcus and Eli?" he asked a man named Rex, who looked pale and shaken. Rex didn't answer at first. Then he leaned in and whispered, "Gone. Taken in the night. Their women said they failed to bring joy." James stared at him. "That's just a saying, right?" Rex's eyes didn't blink. "They screamed, James. I heard it." Kalina appeared behind James. "You are not to speak with others during reflection hours," she said coldly to Rex. Rex nodded quickly and walked away. James looked at Kalina. "Is it true? 2 men are missing?" She didn't answer. She just said, "You must focus on today's task. If your mind is split, joy will not come." "Kalina. What happens if I fail?" She stopped walking. Her expression was unreadable. "Do not fail." Later that day, Kalina brought James to a place deeper within the crystal tower. The walls here didn't shine. They were dark and silent, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. "This is where we feel memory," she explained, "where we share pain." James stepped into a dim chamber. The air felt heavier here, sadder. "I don't like this place," he said. "That is why I brought you here," Kalina replied. "You must reach what you fear. Only then will the bond deepen." "What bond? Why does this feel like a trap?" She turned to him slowly. "Because love always feels like a trap before you understand it." James wanted to laugh, but he didn't. Something in her voice felt too real, too heavy. Kalina placed her palm on a dark panel and the walls changed. Images appeared, moving like liquid glass. They showed a younger Kalina standing alone in a ruined field, crying, reaching for something that vanished in smoke. "That was my sister," she whispered. "She broke the law once. She chose a human, and when he was taken, she lost all joy. The land turned to ash. So did she." James felt her pain in the room. It pressed against his chest like invisible hands. "I don't want this," he said softly. "I didn't come here to be part of this death ritual." Kalina looked at him. "It's not death. It's joy. But real joy only comes when you accept the risk of loss." He shook his head. "This is crazy." A sharp alarm suddenly rang through the tower. Red lights flashed. Kalina's eyes widened. "What is that?" James asked. She grabbed his arm. "Back to your room, now." Back in the room, the glow tree flickered. Outside, the halls were filled with alien guards. They were moving fast, scanning rooms. James saw 2 more human men being dragged out. One of them, Thomas, was yelling, "I didn't fail. I tried. The guards silenced him with a small shock device. He collapsed, twitching. Kalina closed the window blinds with a wave of her hand. 4 now," James whispered. 4 men gone. Kalina looked at him with strange sadness. "It is not punishment," she said. "It is correction." "Correction?" You mean they erase people who don't perform perfectly? They erase what breaks the balance. James stood and stepped back. You're all mad. This whole thing is insane. Kalina didn't move. Would you like to leave? James stared at her. Yes. Honestly? Yes. She nodded once, then stepped to the wall. A panel opened silently. But behind it was not a door, it was a staircase spiraling down deep underground. What is this? James asked. She looked at him, her voice softer now. A place they don't want you to see. But if you want answers, follow me. They went down the dark spiral, stairs. The deeper they went, the colder it got. The lights above faded until only Kalina's glowing eyes lit the path. Finally, they reached a sealed door. She pressed her palm to it. It opened with a hiss. Inside was a room filled with coffins, but they weren't for the dead. Inside the glass pods were Earthmen, alive, sleeping frozen. James's mouth went dry. They're not dead? He asked. Kalina nodded. No, they're suspended until a cure is found. A cure for what? For emptiness, she whispered. They gave false joy, surface joy, but not real feeling. So the bond shattered. When that happens, the human spirit fades. Their mind shuts down. James backed away from the pods. Kalina stepped beside him. Now you see why I chose you. Why? Because you feel everything, even your fear, even your anger. You don't fake it. That's why my field grew when you touched it. That's why you must not fail. He looked into one of the pods. It was Marcus. Tears floated inside his frozen eyes. James swallowed hard. I won't end up like him, he said quietly. Kalina nodded once, then prove it. Tomorrow. Please me where it matters most. James couldn't sleep, not after what he saw underground. The frozen men haunted his mind, faces stuck in silent pain, eyes wide open but empty. They weren't dead, but they weren't alive either. Just lost. Kalina had said it gently. They gave false joy. So the bond collapsed. Now they are suspended until a cure is found. But James didn't believe that. To him, it looked like a graveyard with the lights still on. The next morning, James didn't speak much. Kalina didn't force him to. She watched him from across the room, her expression unreadable, her red eyes softer now. She didn't rush him, didn't ask him to please her. Not yet. Instead, she said, Today, we go where no human is allowed. He followed her without asking why. They walked through twisting corridors deep inside the heart of the city. The walls here didn't glow. They pulsed like they were breathing. There were no guards, no windows, just silence. Kalina placed her hand on a silver gate. It shimmered, scanned her, then opened with a hiss. Inside was a dark chamber filled with voices, whispers, hundreds of them, some crying, some laughing, some begging. James stepped back. What is this place? Kalina answered. The archive of bonds. This is where we store all past connections between our kind and yours. Floating in the center of the room was a glowing orb, slowly turning. Around it, small spinning crystals. Each one held a memory. Kalina pointed to a crystal. This is the first bond. She touched it. A vision burst into the air like a ghostly movie. A long time ago, a human man stood in a golden field, surrounded by alien women. One of them, a younger version of Kalina, held his hand. They laughed together. James leaned forward. Is that you? Kalina nodded. That was my father. And the man? He was the first Earthman to truly please a Velrenan woman, not through body but through sacrifice. The vision changed. The human man shielded Kalina's mother during a rebel attack. He was wounded, bleeding, but still smiling. He stayed when others ran, Kalina whispered. He touched her heart. He gave everything. James watched, in silence. But, she added, he died before the bond was completed. And she, my mother, never smiled again. The vision vanished. The glowing room felt colder now. Kalina turned to him. That's when the elders created the law of joy. They feared sadness, they feared another loss. So they wrote a rule. Every Earthman must give joy daily, or be removed before the bond collapses. James looked around. So this isn't about love. It's about fear. She nodded slowly. The law became a cage, even for us. Back in their room, James finally spoke. This whole system is wrong. Kalina sat across from him. It was built to protect us, but maybe it's time to break it. James thought for a long time. What if someone gave real joy, but not in the way they expect? Kalina tilted her head. What do you mean? He stood up and said, I want to see your world, outside the tower. Not just your pain. Show me what makes you happy. Forget the law, just be with me. For the first time, Kalina looked unsure, nervous even. That is forbidden, she whispered. Good, James said. Let's break something. They escaped the tower at night. Kalina led him to the outer edge of the city, past the glowing rivers, past the floating bridges into the wild zone. No rules, no watchers. Here the air was thick with natural energy. Wild animals with wings soared above. Glowing fish jumped between floating lakes. It was beautiful, untouched. Kalina took off her shoes and stepped into a glowing stream. James followed her, laughing. This is the first time I've seen you relax. She smiled. This is the first time I have relaxed. They spent hours there, talking, laughing, no pressure, no law. Just being two people under strange stars. She taught him how to catch light petals falling from a dream tree. He taught her a human song from Earth. Her voice was soft and shaky, but she tried. And for the first time, James felt it. The real bond, not forced, not commanded, just real. When they returned, Kalina looked changed. Her eyes glowed brighter. Her steps were lighter. You gave me something no one else ever has, she said quietly. What? Freedom. And that is the deepest joy. They stood in silence for a moment. Then James asked, So what happens? Now Kalina turned toward the window. I don't know, but I want to break the law with you, again. The bond had grown. James could feel it. Not in his hands or in his heart, but in the silence. In the way Kalina looked at him without words. In the way she breathed more calmly when he stood beside her. But outside their room, the city had changed. The council had noticed. 3 more human men were missing. One had only whispered that his alien partner felt nothing anymore, and by morning he was gone. And now, the guards watched James too closely. That morning, a message lit up on Kalina's wall panel. It pulsed in red. Unauthorized joy. Level detected. Subject J7 may be forming a legal bond. Kalina read it without speaking. Her shoulders stiffened. James stepped closer. What does it mean? She turned away, her voice low. They know. They sense it. The bond? James asked. She nodded. Wait, but that's what they wanted, right? No, she said. They want joy, not connection, not love. James didn't understand at first. Isn't that the same? Kalina looked at him, and for the first time, her voice shook. No, love is dangerous. It's not something you can measure or control. But joy can be tracked, reported, judged, safe. He felt a chill run down his back. So we gave them too much? She nodded again. They will try to break it. That night, Kalina received a summons. James wasn't invited. She was ordered to appear before the Elders' Circle, a rare sacred trial reserved for emotional instability. She stood at the center of a circular hall, 12 glowing figures watching her from above. Elder Marith spoke first. her voice as sharp as a blade. You are letting the Earthmen in too deeply. Your joy levels are unstable. Your pulse is unmeasured. You are falling into forbidden emotion. Kalina didn't deny it. I am, she said. Gasps filled the chamber. Elder Disha responded coldly. You remember what happened the last time one of us bonded. Chaos, collapse, war. Kalina stood tall. This time is different. You will prove it, Marith said, or he will be removed. Back in her chamber, Kalina didn't speak for a long time. James watched her carefully. They want to take me, don't they? Yes, she said. Unless you fail. Fail what? She turned to him slowly. Tomorrow we must perform the ritual of surface joy. Fake pleasure, forced happiness. If we do it well, they'll think the bond is weak. James stared at her. They want us to lie? Yes. Or we lose everything. James crossed his arms. Then let them come. Kalina's voice dropped to a whisper. If they take you, I'll lose more than my joy. I'll lose myself. That night, James didn't sleep. He remembered her touch when they laughed under the glowing tree. He remembered her voice trying to sing a human melody. He remembered her crying silently when she showed him her sister's fate. And he knew one thing clearly. He didn't want to fake joy anymore. He wanted to fight for it. The next day, James didn't follow Kalina to the ritual hall. Instead, he walked straight into the council tower. Alone. The guards shouted. He didn't stop. They tackled him near the chamber gates, but not before he yelled, I have something to say, and if you silence me, you prove that this law was never about joy, it was about fear. Everything froze. Even the elders were silent. Kalina arrived seconds later, breathless, eyes wide. James stood to his feet, blood on his chin, voice steady. You wanted joy. You got it. But now you're scared because it didn't come on your terms. He turned to Kalina. Tell them. She stepped forward, trembling. I don't want surface joy, she said. I want the real thing, even if it hurts, even if it's risky. Elder Marith stood. That is illegal. James looked at her and said calmly, then change your law, or lose everything. Silence again, until a voice spoke from the shadows, an elder with a withered face and a broken arm. Let the boy finish. James took a deep breath. I came here thinking joy was easy. Just smile, talk, follow rules. But that's not real joy. Real joy means crying with someone, feeling afraid with them, growing with them, and yes, loving them. He looked at Kalina. And I love her. Gasps filled the hall. Elders argued. Guards stepped forward. But the old broken-armed elder raised his voice one last time. Enough. He turned to the others. The law must evolve, or it will shatter. By sundown, a decision was made. Not peace, not war, but a pause, a final test. Kalina and James were ordered into seclusion. No contact, no touch, no speech. For 7 days. If the bond faded, James would be erased. If it survived, the law would be rewritten. For the first time since he arrived on Velrina, James was completely alone. The walls were gray, the lights were dim. His room was cold and silent. No glowing plants, no music, no Kalina. Just a thin mat, a table, and a clock counting each hour of isolation. This was the trial of pleasure. 7 days of silence. No contact, no words, no warmth. The elders believed joy would fade without constant connection. They wanted to prove the bond was fake. James had to prove it wasn't. The first day passed slowly. James sat on the cold floor staring at the door. Every few minutes he thought of Kalina, her voice, her eyes, the way she smiled only when she was surprised, the way she sat quietly when she was sad. He missed even her silence. But he didn't break. Not yet. On the second day, the silence became louder. There were no windows, no outside noise, no footsteps, just the soft hum of machines monitoring his body. He began talking to himself, whispering Kalina's name under his breath. He wasn't sure if that was allowed, but it made the walls feel less cruel. He imagined her voice saying, "Stay strong. Don't let them erase what we have." On the third day, something strange happened. The wall in front of him flickered. A screen blinked on. Static. Then a face appeared. It wasn't Kalina. It was another alien woman. One of the council assistants, Jarin. She leaned in, her voice, soft but sharp. "You are weakening," she said. "I can feel it." James blinked. "This isn't part of the test." "No," she replied. "But I don't want you to win." "What?" Jarin smiled coldly. "You don't understand. Human, if your bond with Kalina succeeds, you'll change the law. But some of us, like the old ways." She leaned closer. "You think Kalina is the only one who's ever loved a human? She's not. And every one of us lost the person we loved because of this law." James felt a chill in his chest. "Then why stop us?" Jarin's smile faded. "Because if you succeed, it means we failed, and I'd rather watch you fall than admit we were cowards." The screen vanished. James stared at the wall for a long time. He wasn't just fighting silence anymore. He was fighting those who hated hope. By the 5th day, James was sick, not from food or poison, but from the weight of being unseen, untouched, unheard. He whispered stories to the walls, old Earth songs, childhood memories. He even pretended Kalina was sitting beside him listening. Sometimes, he felt her there. Other times, he didn't. On the 6th night, the lights went out. All of them. The room turned completely black. Then a door he didn't know existed opened. A figure stepped in. Not a guard, not Jarin, Kalina. Her breath was shaky, her steps slow. She didn't speak. She just knelt beside him and touched his hand. It was warm. James closed his eyes. "I'm not supposed to talk," he whispered. Kalina touched her lips, then her heart. Then she placed something in his hand. A flower. It was wilted, but glowing, faintly blue. The same kind that bloomed only in joy fields. It came from her. Without speaking, she mouthed, "Hold on." And she was gone. Day 7 arrived. The elders came. 12 of them in silver robes, eyes watching, cold and distant. They entered. Both chambers, James in one, Kalina in the other. No words were spoken. The walls between the rooms opened like a curtain. They faced each other for the first time in 7 days. Kalina looked thinner, tired. James looked the same, but his eyes were burning now. Elder Marith stepped forward. "If your joy was real, the bond will remain. If not, we'll return you to Earth, and your partner will be erased from the archives." Kalina trembled. James stood still. "Now," the elder said, "speak the first word that enters your mind." James looked at Kalina. He took a deep breath and said, "Stay." Kalina gasped. She stepped forward and whispered, "Always." Suddenly, the joy meter exploded. Lights burst, energy surged, the floor trembled. Plants bloomed from the walls. The bond wasn't just alive, it was growing, real, unbreakable. Jarin stepped forward, face pale. This is a trick." But the old elder, the one with the broken arm, stood and raised his hand. "No," he said softly. "This is hope." That night the council met, and for the first time in 1,000 cycles, they voted to rewrite the law of joy, not as a command, but as a choice. Velrina had never felt so alive. Flowers that hadn't bloomed in years now burst open across the city walls. The crystal towers sang softly as the joy field pulsed through them. Children laughed in the open air again, without fear of silence. Even the stars above the sky seemed brighter, and at the center of it all stood James and Kalina. The council chamber, once cold and distant, was now warm with light. 12 elders stood in a circle, silent, not because of fear, but because they no longer had words strong enough to explain what they had seen. The bond between James and Kalina had not only survived the trial, it had rewritten it. The energy they created together healed dying fields, woke sleeping plants, and rebalanced ancient systems across the planet. It was undeniable, unstoppable, and so the law of joy was broken. Elder Marith, once cold and strict, stepped forward with shaking hands. For generations, she said softly, we believed joy could be controlled, that it should be safe, simple, repeated. She looked at James. But you reminded us that joy is also pain, risk, wild. It cannot be measured. It must be felt. Then she turned to Kalina. You dared to fall, and because you did, we now rise. A new law was written that very day. Joy shall not be demanded. It must be shared. Pleasure shall not be reported. It must be real. Love, if it grows, shall be honored. No more daily reports. No more fear of exile. No more erasing what could not be understood. The Earth Embassy arrived days later. They expected to retrieve James. Instead, they found him standing beside Kalina on a floating garden bridge. Hands linked, surrounded by blooming vines. The human ambassador, a gray-haired woman named Elena, raised an eyebrow. So, you're not coming home? James smiled. I am home. Kalina stepped forward. Earth gave us your heart. In return, we offer this bond between our people and yours. The ambassador nodded slowly. Then let the bond be written into our stars. A year passed and the city of Velrina transformed. Alien and human couples walked side by side. Gardens once restricted now overflowed with emotion-rich energy. Music, both Earth and Velrinan, filled the air. Even the coldest council members began to smile. One by one, old wounds healed. James and Kalina didn't live in the tower anymore. They moved to the outer forest, where the joy fields were wild, untamed, and honest. Together they grew a home shaped like a heartstone, filled with light, laughter, and stories. Some days, Kalina taught James to dance with petals on water. Other days, James read Earth poems under glowing trees while she rested her head on his shoulder. But every day, every single day, they chose joy, not because of law, but because of love. One morning, a small child from the nearby village wandered into their garden. She looked up at Kalina and asked, "Is it true? You used to be cold?" Kalina smiled. "Very cold. And he melted you?" Kalina laughed and nodded toward James. "No, I melted myself. But he reminded me I could." The little girl smiled, picked a glowing flower, and ran off. That night, James stood outside looking at the stars. Kalina joined him, silent as always at first. He took her hand and whispered, "Do you ever miss the old life?" She shook her head. "I only miss the time we lost before we stopped pretending." They stood together as the twin moons rose above the trees. Two lights, very different, but shining together, balanced. And thus, the new law was not carved in stone. It was written in hearts, and passed down, not through orders, but through stories.